Hello, all you wonderful people out there in the dark. Thank you again for checking in. I wanted to talk a little bit about a cat named Jackie Coogan. Now, I know what you're thinking. Who is Jackie Coogan? Well, the short answer is he was an actor. But the reason I want to talk to you about him today is he's actually someone who lived here in Lake Elsinore. So he's the third famous person. Now, I lived in Elsinore in the mid to late 20s. But we've got Bela Lugosi. We've got Amy McPherson, Amy's Castle, the famous evangelist. And now we have Jackie Coogan. Now, Jackie Coogan, I believe he was born in August of 1914. He passed away March the 1st, 1984. He was only 69 years old, I believe. Something like that. My math, it's getting late and I've been drinking. But Jackie Coogan, he rose to fame in silent movies. Charlie Chaplin actually discovered him at the Orpheum Theater doing some vaudeville nonsense. And he was very, very good with his mimic abilities. And I think his first film with Chaplin was 1919, A Day's Pleasure, I believe. His most famous Chaplin movie, if you will, was in 1921, The Kid, which you should have all seen if you've not seen it. And it's kind of an all-over twist tale. I'll actually, in a moment or so here, I'll show you some pictures of Mr. Coogan, Mr. Chaplin, one in the movie The Kid, and then a couple of pictures of Mr. Coogan, I guess in real life. The unfortunate thing about Mr. Coogan is, in his day, he actually made, I want to say, like $3 to $4 million in the 1919 to the 1920s, which in today's money is like 45 to 60 million. $45 to $60 million. Now, this poor bastard, unbeknownst to him, his parents basically spent all his bread. Let's see, I want to say, not only his movies, I mean, he peddled a lot of stuff too, peanut butter, whistles, pretty much anything that you could sell in the 20s, Coogan was peddling. But in 1935, he was about 20 years old, and he ended up being a sole survivor in a car crash down in San Diego. I think his old man passed away, his best friend, and a couple other cats all perished in this car crash. They were coming back from Mexico, I think, from a hunting trip. But anyway, he ended up being the sole survivor, and he came to learn, I'm not sure exactly when, but at some point, his father, his mother, and ultimately his stepfather had spent all of his money, or damn near all of it. I think he ended up suing his mother and stepfather, and of the $4 million, all that was left was about $250,000, and he got about $125,000. And his own mother said that they made no promises to little Jackie about what they were going to do with his money. And why that's sort of important is because when he sued his mother and stepfather for squandering his fortune, there was actually a bill that was passed called the Child Bill Act, and it's known today as the Coogan Act. And I don't know the details, but essentially it means that if your kid's working in Hollywood or singing songs or doing whatever they do, you cannot spend the kid's bread. Anyway, so Coogan realizes he's basically broke, and about that time, he's doing radio, he's doing a bunch of other things. An interesting thing about Jackie is World War II comes along, he volunteers, and he ends up being a flight, like a flight officer, because he's got some piloting skills, he had his own plane, etc., etc. He comes back from World War II, he does a lot of TV, Perry Mason, Partridge Family, Wild Wild West, which is a good show if you've not seen that. Wild Wild West. Not the movie, the TV show, McMillan and Wife. But he ended up being, in the 60s, an ABC show called The Addams Family. Now, The Addams Family Not the Addams Family with Raul Julia and Angelica Houston from the early 90s. This is the 60s TV show that spawned those movies. We all know Gomez Addams, which was played by John Astin. Morticia, I forget who played her. Uncle Fester, who was Jackie Coogan. And then you had their two kids, Wednesday and Pugsley. And Mr. Coogan ultimately passed away, I think I already mentioned, in 84. He was 69 years old. But one interesting thing, he was married 4 times and he had several children. He was actually married to Betty Grable once, so not too shabby there, Jackie. Not too shabby at all. But he had a daughter with one of his wives named Leslie Coogan, who had a son named Keith Coogan, who you may know that name or may recognize. He was in some movies in the 80s and early 90s, The Adventures of Babysitting with, I think it's Elizabeth Shue, and Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead with the gal, her name escapes me at the moment, from Married with Children. Oh well, I can't remember her name, but you know who she is. So he managed to have some sort of a career. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this house that Mr. Coogan lived in the mid-20s. It was built, I think, in 1926. It's 9,000 square feet. It's got 18 bedrooms and 3 garages. And you have to remember, this was during Prohibition, so it actually had some secret rooms, like a bookcase that opened up, and it was a secret, I guess we'll call it a wine room. It was originally built, when was it originally built? It was originally built 1926 by Henry Schultz, and he was part of that Cleveland Realty Corporation. Originally it was called Schultz Mansion, and there's only been, at least through 96, there was actually only 3 owners: Mr. Schultz, Mr. Coogan, and then a lady named Charlotte, I think it's Bredalou, purchased the home, I think in the, 70s or 80s, and she actually used it as a nursing home. It was called Skyline Manor, and eventually it was called Bredalou Manor or Bredalou Castle. And you'll see here in the pictures in a moment, it's in the Spanish sort of Mediterranean style. What blows me away is that this house, has existed in the hills of Lake Elsinore, just tucked away, and it's just this massive home, and it's beautiful. It's still in private hands, so it's very difficult to get terribly close, but I did the best I could. Again, I just wanted to show it to you. I thought it was interesting. I think if you've not seen The Kid, take a look. It's probably one of Chaplin's best known movies. I'm going to say Mr. Coogan did a good job in it as a little boy. And it's a shame that his family spent all his bread. But he ended up being a character actor, and I think on the whole, he had 4 wives, so his life couldn't have been too terribly bad, and he had a number of children. Anyway, so here's a couple of pictures of Mr. Coogan as Uncle Fester, as the kid, as in life. I've only got a couple of pictures of his house, the early years. It's very, very difficult to find any. I don't know how long he lived there. And then I've got a couple of pictures of when Charlotte owned the place. And then I took a drive, and you'll get to see at least a few shots of it. So let's go take a look, and we'll check back here in a second. So we are on our way to Uncle Fester's house. Making our way up Skyline Drive. Should be nearly there. There she is. Fester's house. Amazing. See there, the one-car garage still standing. What a magnificent home. Uncle Fester's house. Lake. About as close as we're going to be able to get. I said earlier, I believe it's 9,000 square feet. There's the house. There's the view of Lake Elsinore. Wow, you're back fast. Anyway, there is Jackie Coogan's home from the mid-20s. Again, I believe it's in private hands, but it spent at least a couple of decades as a nursing home under Breda Lou's, I guess, care. I found it very, very interesting. I hope you did too. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, take a look at Mr. Coogan's work. If you're ever in Lake Elsinore, it's worth a drive to at least see the home. Do not disturb the owners. Just drive by calmly and slowly. Don't be a lunatic. Anyway, in this world, when you could be anything you want, you be kind, you be humble, you be forgiving, and you be melting snow. Bye-bye.